So I think I'll start with this little presentation to start. It's a introduction to what Poll Everywhere is, how it works, and then how to register for an account. And then I'll follow that with a demo of a couple Poll Everywhere slides, although I think everyone here has probably seen what they look like before. And then I'll talk about creating a new poll and then organizing your poll questions in groups, followed by how to download and install that Poll Everywhere app, although I can't install it on this this computer here, but I can tell you where to go to do that. And then things like changing your Poll Everywhere homepage. Everybody who signs up for a campus account gets a unique Poll Everywhere page that they can use to distribute polls. And then if I have time at the end, I'll talk about how to pull some of the reports on polls that you've distributed to people. So first, if anybody here or anybody listening to this later doesn't have a Poll Everywhere account or is still using one of the free ones, we highly recommend that you use the site license, which is our annual subscription to Poll Everywhere. It gives you a lot of extra features. It gives you those custom personalized polling pages I was talking about. It increases the poll response limit to 200 instead of 40. Normally, with the free account, you can only collect 40 responses at a time. This one can collect 200, and we can actually increase it from there if the college gets any bigger. But as it currently stands, we figure there's not many situations where we have more than 200 students in one place. And then if you use the site license, everything that you do on Poll Everywhere, I can see in the background and help you fix your slides and help you arrange things, maybe move slides around from one account to another. So instructional technology, my office can help support anything as long as you use the site license, the campus subscription. So the first step, if you don't already have one or if you think you're still using one of the free accounts, is to register for an account. And that's an invitation-based system where you can send me an email requesting an account, or you can request accounts on behalf of other people if you know you have lecturers or people who would like to use Poll Everywhere but aren't in contact with me. I'll receive your invitation, and then what I'll do is go into the Poll Everywhere admin page, type in your email addresses, and those don't have to be U of A emails, although I would recommend that you use one. When you get that invitation, it's very similar to a lot of email invitations you might receive, so be sure to check your junk mail. I know the U of A email system, I think it's better now, but it used to be pretty notorious for sticking these in the junk mail folder, so make sure you check there. Once you click on the link in that email, you'll receive a prompt to create a password. This isn't necessarily the same as your NetID password, although you're welcome to use your NetID password if you'd like. Just remember that when you change your NetID, the password at Poll Everywhere is not going to change. So to log into Poll Everywhere, the site that you'll probably want to bookmark is polleverywhere.com/login. Although please don't go here until you've registered and created your own site license account. We've had several people end up with free accounts that they didn't realize they had because they went to the login page first and signed up. So just as a reminder, always use that email invitation. But polleverywhere.com/login gets you to the login page. I'll actually show you in the back here what that looks like. It's kind of their public front-facing page. It says live audience participation. The login link is up here in the upper right if you end up at the home page. If you go to polleverywhere.com/login, you get somewhat of a less busy, less video enabled web page. It's a little easier to get to. And you can do this from any device, an iPad or even an iPhone, although it's pretty hard to edit polls on a tiny little phone screen. I wanted to go over a few of the important pieces of terminology for Poll Everywhere that can confuse some people. A poll is what is a single question. Every time they refer to a poll or a set of polls, they're referring to single questions, and you can group those questions or those polls together to create what Poll Everywhere calls a survey. Doesn't necessarily mean it's a survey in the sense that you send it out to people and have them asynchronously respond, but if you group the questions together, then you can present these poll questions to people in a certain order during your presentation, because most people have multiple poll questions that they'd like to ask. So just remember, every time the word poll is referenced, we're talking about a single question. So Poll Everywhere is intended and is really good for presenting in front of a live audience. We have other tools like SurveyMonkey and Google Forms that are good for collecting responses asynchronously, but Poll Everywhere is a great tool to use if you have a live audience of people. And this has been used in audiences in convention centers of up to 10,000 people, so it scales really well. It's good for a few people, it's good for thousands. It's a great way to stimulate discussion. It's a great way to increase audience interest in what you're talking about, to wake students up maybe halfway through your lecture. It's a great way to make sure that the people you're presenting to understand the topic that you're presenting. And it can be used as an informal way to vote on things, either the direction of a lecture or to make a decision. It's not great for very high stakes things. We don't recommend using it for quiz and testing because it's not the most secure in that you can use multiple devices to answer, and most polls are recorded anonymously. We don't recommend it for study material. The polls don't really work very well if students or audience members look at them afterwards, if they can access them at all. Some people do send out survey links, and so you can look at these questions, but oftentimes after the live presentation is over, the questions are not that useful. And as I mentioned, it's not good for extended long surveys that you send out, but I recommend, if you have that need, using Google Forms or SurveyMonkey, which are both two other officially supported tools here at the college. So Poll Everywhere supports currently three main response venues. One is the website, so pollev.com/yourname. I'll explain how to set that up in a little while, but that's one advantage to using the site license and creating an official account with us, is that you get this custom website where people can respond to whatever question you're presenting at the moment. Probably the most fun way to do it is on a text message. This is just like American Idol or all those game shows use when they text in a response. You send a SMS text message to a 5-digit phone number, which seems a little strange if you've never done it before, but I promise it works. So you text a code to a number, and then your response shows up on the screen. And then if you'd like, although we haven't had very many people use this in the past, you can also collect responses via Twitter, which is kind of a fun way if you have a very large audience, or especially outside users who've never used it before but are familiar with social media. You can collect responses this way, but it requires you to have your own Twitter account. PowerPoint integration is something that has changed in the last 2 years since we got Poll Everywhere. They switched from Flash-based to HTML5, which you don't need to understand the difference there, except that it now requires the Poll Everywhere Presenter app to be downloaded, installed, and running on your computer. This trips some people up because they'll create their polls with PowerPoint integration on a work computer or a home computer or a laptop, and then come to a venue like a classroom or lecture hall like this, where the Poll Everywhere app isn't installed, and it actually isn't installed on this computer today either. I don't have a admin password for it. But the alternative, like I mentioned there, is that you can always present from a web browser. So if you run into a problem with your PowerPoint integration, I really don't recommend that you try PowerPoint integration the very first time you do Poll Everywhere, just because it can be frustrating if you don't know what you're doing. But you can always present from a web browser, and that's a very reliable way to do it. So a lot of people will still give a PowerPoint presentation, and then when they get to their Poll Everywhere segment, they'll just switch over to a web browser and present that way. But if you want to download the app and you know what you're doing, and you have a laptop that you have admin privileges to, it's a little hard to see there, but it's polleverywhere.com/app, where you can download the Mac or PC presenter app. There isn't an app yet for iPads or other tablets, but most of the time you'll be presenting from some sort of desktop or laptop computer. The limitations of our campus site license are 200 responses per poll, but if you have a really large audience, the easy way to do that is to segment the audience into 200-person groups and ask this half of the room a question first and then ask the other half of the room. You can duplicate questions, you can clear the results and start again. There's lots of ways to get around this limit, but we pay for a certain level of service, and currently that's at 200. If you do have any reason to use an audience of more than 200 people, just let me know and we can get a 1-month extension to that limit, so it's pretty easy to do. I mentioned a few times your pollev.com personal webpage. In the examples that I'm going to show, it's just pollev.com/readm. These do have to be unique, so you can't. It's hard to use just your first name because some other Poll Everywhere customer out in the world may have used that. But a lot of people, if they use their first and last names, are able to set up a unique name here, and then it's easy for your students to remember where to go to respond to your polls. These websites, these web pages that have your name in them, are where students would go to respond to any poll that's pushed to the page. I'll show you what that looks like in a few minutes. And this is where you would send audience members who either don't have a cell phone, or if you're in an area, a lot of rooms in this building have somewhat poor cell phone reception, they can always respond online, like from an iPad or a laptop, or even a phone if they prefer not to use text messaging. As I mentioned, you need to register a unique name, and you can do that. I'll show you here in the presentation how to set that up under the settings section of Poll Everywhere and setting up your pollev.com page. So the first step to creating a poll once you log in is to push the red button up in the upper left corner that says Create a Poll. And it's pretty easy from there. I'll go through an example of that here soon. But typing in your questions and answers, or leaving it an open source or an open response question is pretty easy. So if it's the first time you're presenting with Poll Everywhere, I recommend that you give me a call or send me an email. And I can usually schedule a time to come meet with you in the lecture hall about 15, 10, even 5 minutes before your lecture starts, just to make sure everything works. If it's the first time you've been using it, or especially if you're trying to use PowerPoint integration, you don't want to be stuck in the middle of a lecture with something not working, so I can come and make sure that everything's working for you. So my phone number and my email address are right there. I'm going to show you a lot of some demos and how to navigate through the poll creation page and the grouping page. But if at any time after this, if you want more information, there's a whole lot of features I'm not going to have time to cover. You can go to polleverywhere.com/guide, and they have a fully up-to-date user guide there with videos and examples and all sorts of helpful stuff. So at this point, what I'm going to do, as I mentioned, is log in. I have an administrative account under my U of A email address, so I'm going to log in with my personal Gmail account just to show you what it would look like for the average user. So when I first log in, I'm presented with a list of all the polls. Remember, each poll that I create is or each question is a separate poll, so I have this list of polls here. I have that Create Poll button up in the upper left, as I mentioned, and then I have these tabs across the top, which I'll talk about in a few minutes, on how to access reports, register your participants, and change things like your polleverywhere.com homepage. But first, I'm just going to demonstrate what these polls look like and some of the features that are available when you're presenting them. So to access the first poll in my group, notice I have this demo quiz section, so I'm going to present 5 questions to you. I'm just going to click on the question name. It's going to bring up the poll in a polling slide here, and then there's a button right here on the right where I can toggle it to full screen. So I'm going to toggle to full screen and allow it. And then notice that when I hover my mouse over the right side, these buttons appear, and then they disappear when I hover my mouse off. So just remember that some of these features are hidden, these tools are hidden until I hover my mouse. So I'm going to go through each of these, but first, if any of you have never done this before, let's go ahead and try and answer this question. The question is, The condition anosmia means the loss of what sense? So you can text one of these codes, one of these 6-digit codes, to the number 22333, or if you can't figure that out, go to the website polev.com/readm, and you should see a list of choices that you can click on. So it looks like we have one response already. Anybody else? There we go, we have 3 responses. Anybody else? Okay. At this point I'll show you, if I'm done with this poll and I don't want to accept any more responses, I can click this toggle start stop button, and that locks the poll so no one can respond anymore. Or if I don't want responses to come in until a certain point, I can go to this slide and immediately toggle it off, wait till I explain the question fully, and then toggle it on for people to submit their responses. Down here in the bottom, there's also a little timer where I can type in, say I only want to give my audience 10 seconds to answer. If I type in 10 and then push start timer, it opens the polls for responses for 10 seconds, and then as soon as the timer's up, in 3, 2, 1, it closes the poll again. So that's a great way if you want to only give a certain amount of time to answer the question. Maybe people don't have time to look on Wikipedia or something. On the right side here, this unpush from poll EV page is also important. You also want that to be green if it's to appear on your personal website. If not, if I unclick that, it's not going to show up on the website. By default, these will be on, so you don't really have to worry about that. But if people are saying that they can't see it on the website, that little button on the right, the poll EV page button, is important to remember. I'm going to indicate what the right answer is by checking this toggle correctness button, and that highlights the correct answer in green. When I create the poll, I'll show you how to indicate which of your responses is the correct answer. That's a good way to tell people, which one is correct. If I also want to hide the results, if I want to just only accept responses without showing people the responses ahead of time, especially if it's like a quiz question or something, I can put it into the hide responses mode, which is the second button on the right here, and that just gives people the codes and the answers with the instructions, but it doesn't show them the chart until you push this show chart button. This top button, this visual settings, allows me to make all sorts of changes to the visual layout and design of the slide. This is something that the Poll Everywhere developers are constantly adding things to, so check back if you haven't looked in a while. I'm using a standard template here that has the U of A logo in it, and you're free to use that. That's probably the one, if you use a campus account, that's the one that'll appear. Most people are happy with it, but if you'd like, you can change to all sorts of different visual settings. You can even put photos in there. Try not to make it too crazy, but you can also change how the chart is arranged. You can make it a bar chart or a column chart, and you can do all of these sorts of edits either before you present your poll or on the fly if you're in a space that has maybe a strangely shaped monitor or something and the text is too small. You can change all sorts of things here in the visual settings. Anyway, as soon as I'm ready to move on to the next poll question and I'm still in full screen mode, I can go down here to the lower right corner and click on the little button that appears when I hover my mouse down there, Next Poll. And you'll see this one is toggled already to start, and it's already been pushed to that Poll EV page. So if any of you have that page open on your iPads or laptops, you should see answers presented here. I'm going to give us maybe 30 seconds to answer. Looks like we have 2 responses there already. I'll wait for a third response, because I know there's a third person out there who's got a device. There we go. So I'm going to toggle this question to stop, since I've got 4 responses now before the timer goes off. And then I'm also going to indicate the correctness. It's O. Type O is the most common. And then say I'm presenting this question again or people answer too early. I can also clear the results right here on the poll slide by clicking this button, Clear Poll Results. That erases everybody's results. I'm going to remove the correctness check mark, and then I can give this poll question again if there's a new group or if I'm representing this. It's probably easier if you're presenting the same thing over and over again to go through and clear the results of all your slides in between the presentations rather than getting caught with the answers there when you're presenting it again. But that tool is available for you. And then,
I got a text message back. Because I chose AB just to see what it would do. And it says single letters only work after you enter the presenter or session keyword. This is usually provided for you on screen.
Did you text AB or did you text the code? Yeah, you have to text the code. Because
I think I must have looked at it when it was just the options down there.
Yeah.
And I didn't.
Yeah. And if you get confused, a lot of people like the text messaging option, but it's probably also the most confusing way to answer. People, especially new users, have a hard time with this concept of codes to a 5-digit phone number, which a lot of people have never heard of. That's why if you sense any frustration or difficulty in the audience, encourage people to go to the website, because that'll be a lot easier for them to answer. Let me get back to my question here. So if I'm going to move on to another one, this is a different type of poll. This is an open-ended, actually I'll skip this one and go to an open-ended question. Here we go. So this is an open-ended question. This doesn't have set answers, but this allows you to put in short responses. There isn't a text or a character limit that I've seen, but you should probably keep your responses pretty short. I'd recommend like Twitter length or shorter. Just because if you put in long paragraph responses, it'll clutter up the screen and it's hard for people to read. But this question is, what is your medical specialty, or for those of you who aren't doctors, what would it be if you imagined that you were a doctor? And this allows you to text or respond on the website. This is a slightly different procedure where you're still texting to the number 22333. And this time you do get to text a word, but you just have to include this code 962376 in your text message. So it's easiest to type 962376 space and then type out whatever message you want to appear on the screen. So I have this set to, I think this is looking like a word cloud or something. There's 4 different types of response you can put up here. In fact, since we have it running right now, I'm just going to go into the visual settings and I'm going to change, yeah, it's word cloud. So I'm going to change this to a text wall visualization. And you're seeing the responses show up on the left here. Or I can change it to a cluster. These are just different ways to arrange the responses on the screen. You can even make it a little ticker here so that the responses, I'm going to change the speed here so it speeds up, so that the responses scroll along. Whichever way you like to do it, you can test them out. Word cloud is great if you're using like single words, because then the word will get bigger the more responses that word is eliciting. Okay, so looks like I have 4 responses here. I'm just going to clear those poll results because I may want to use it again later. And then I'm going to go to the next poll. So it's where were you born? So just to try it one more time, maybe try a different method than you tried before. If you tried the website, try texting 22333 and then text that 6-digit number followed by whatever your response is. I think this one we're using the cluster visualization. So I'll respond to this one too. So if you notice the texting, I sent that about 10 seconds ago, so it comes in pretty quickly. But again, if you're in an area that has poor cell phone reception, the text message responses may not come through so quickly.
So why isn't it like my responses would you say about numbers?
So you have to include that 6-digit code in your text message. So in my case, I texted to that number, I texted 962265, and then I typed out my answer. And that's just so that the poll everywhere system is able to know to which poll you're responding, because at any one time there may be hundreds of people presenting poll everywhere responses or poll everywhere questions, and they're all using the same phone number, 22333. There we go. If it's not coming through on the text, remember you can try the Poll EV website as well. There we go. So I'm gonna toggle out of full screen here, go back to my editing window, and just explain what some of these options are along either side. So if you notice, even though I'm in the editing view here, I've still got the live polling window in the middle of the screen that I can toggle full screen or not. Here's one thing for these open-ended questions. Let me make this full screen again. These open-ended questions, because they are a little more difficult to answer on the text message, you can hide the responses and show this help slide, and that explains to new users a little more easily that you're texting to a number and then you use a number here followed by your response. Or you can go to the website in your mobile browser or on a laptop and type in your response to the text box.
But the number definitely has to be first.
Yes.
Yeah, I thought it was just anywhere in the message.
No, I'm sorry. Yeah, it has to come first. That's the indicator to the system that you're responding to this question. Okay. So I'm going to make this not full screen anymore. And I'm going to go over, I'm going to go back to the My Polls list here. I'm going to go over how to organize these polls into groups. What I just did is presented a group, well, I skipped a question there, but I presented a group of questions to you, and so it went through this order. If I went past the Where Were You Born question, it would skip back to the first. And the way that I've done this is I've grouped these into, well, different groups, or as Poll Everywhere calls them, surveys, like you can get a survey view. So I have a whole list of other questions here that I've asked people previously, and it shows me the number of responses I received if I haven't already cleared the responses. So if I want to, if I've created another question and I want to move it into the group, I can just grab the question on the left there and drag it up into the list, and that changes the order in which the questions are presented when you're going through them in order. If I create a new question and I click that Create a Poll red button, it's just going to give me a basic text box here. So I'm going to ask, how many bones are in the human wrist? So I'll make this a multiple choice question. I'll say it can be 6, 7, 8, or 9. And then if I don't have another question to add at this time, I can keep going and adding multiple questions here, but I'll stick with this one and push Create. And then it'll show me what this question looks like. I can adjust the visual settings. I can change the way that this is arranged into a bar or bar chart or a horizontal chart. If I click Edit here, I can check this box, Grade Incoming Responses, and this is where I can mark the correct answer, which is 8. At least when I looked it up, it was 8. And I can also indicate that each person can respond X number of times, or each person can respond an unlimited number of times. In most cases, you're going to want people to only be able to respond once so that they don't just keep hitting the button to bump the graph up. You can make the responses anonymous, although in most cases the responses are already anonymous. If you're more advanced and you want to record the names of students, you can have them pre-register. I'll show you where that is. It's in the participants section up here. But in most cases, it's easiest just to leave these. These are not high-stakes questions. It's easy to leave these anonymous. You can indicate, although I don't recommend indicating a reply message, something that it'll text back to the person after they successfully submit a text message response. You can choose to accept text messages or messages to your polev.com page. You can turn on Twitter. I never do because I don't usually recommend it, but if you have a Twitter account, you can check this box and turn it on. And you can also create a private link, which is probably not the easiest way to do it, but that creates a link that you can have people click on rather than going to the polev.com page, although they'd have to keep clicking on different links for each question. In most cases, you're good if you use text messages and the web devices option. So getting down here, you can say that everyone responds or only registered participants. And then you can schedule a start and stop time, although most of the time it's easy to just leave your questions running, leave them on and open. And then if you do need to stop accepting responses, you toggle the response on and off right there on the live polling slide. So I'm going to save this poll question, and it's going to put it in my list of questions, probably under the ungrouped section up at the top. There it is. So if I want to put it into my medical demo quiz that I gave all of you, I'm just going to drag it down and put it there right at the beginning. And then when I go into this quiz, I can click on it first. I can also do some of those things, clearing the results, copying the question right here when I'm out of full screen. But when I'm in full screen, I can accept responses. This poll is on because this button is green. So somebody's indicated that they're 7, even though I already told you the right answer. In this case, since it's like a quiz question, I can hide this question so that you only see the answers in the codes. And then I can show the chart, and then I can indicate what the correct answer is by checking that green checkbox. And then I can move on to the next poll. Remember, I placed this at the beginning of my quiz, so I'll click next, and it'll bring me to that same anosmia question again. Does that make sense to everybody, how those are arranged? Hit escape to get out of it. Go back to the My Polls page. And then, like I talked about, I can rearrange these. Or if I don't want a question anymore, I don't want to ask that Legionnaire's question, I can check the box. Then I can go up to the top here and delete it. Those gray buttons up at the top are pretty useful. You can also check multiple and create a new group. So I want to create a new group out of those 3 questions. I'll just push group, and it pops them out of that group and puts a new group down at the bottom. Or I can push edit and call this second quiz group or something. And I'll push save, and that's a whole separate group. So I can collapse these, I can expand them. I can edit that specific question. I mean, I can also edit it by clicking on it and pushing edit, but there's multiple ways to do it. And then again, it shows you the number of responses over here on the right. So I'm going to real quickly show you the settings page where you can set up if you have, my mouse is starting to quit working. If you go to the settings page in your account, you can create that poll EV page. So this is after you've registered for your own sub account in our campus license account. You can go here and type in whatever name you want to use. Say I'll change mine to, if I wanted it to just be read, it's going to say that one's already taken by somebody out, another customer. But if read M is already taken, I can go all the way out to Reed Michelson. That one's already taken because I have another account. So I'm going to put my middle initial in there, which is B. And that one's available. So then I can push change. And now I can tell my audience that if they want to answer my poll questions, they can go to that page. Most of the rest of the things here you don't have to worry about. You can look at your response history if you're registered for an account and you're responding to other people's questions. It'll show you which questions you've answered. Reporting is where I can go to download all these responses afterwards if I'm interested in seeing which questions were answered. So if I go to the report section, the workflow here is that I choose questions first, and then I choose, and then I generate the report, then I choose what format I want the data to be downloaded in. So we had a couple responses for how many bones are in the human wrist, so I'm going to go to that one. I'm going to click Add to Report. I'm going to choose the condition anosmia question, click Add to Report, and then we'll do the question I asked a long time ago, what's the capital city of Arizona? Add that to the report, push Generate. And then I get all these different formats of this report. So a list here is just showing a person-by-person response. So since I had different people answer this question a long time ago, they show up with no responses for these first two questions. And then those of you who answered these two, it's showing that this person didn't answer the human bone question, but answered the anosmia question. Map is a little strange. We're all here in Phoenix, so it's just going to show Arizona on the map. But if you took a poll from, I don't know, people at a convention or something where people were from all over the country and they answered via phone numbers, it'll show where the phone numbers are from. If I look at a summary, it's just a different format here. It gives me the number of responses for each answer and which one was correct. Survey isn't really as useful if you're not conducting a long multi-question survey. Pivot data is like something you can download into Excel. You can go over here and click on the spreadsheet download. Report card, if you have people answering, it can show how many people answered the correct question. Again, these are all anonymous, so there's no names here on the left, but there would be if you had people register and respond with their name. So I can show you how participant registration works. Everybody who has a yeah.
So if you are doing a presentation at an international meeting, we could use Poll Everywhere.
Yes.
Through the U of A site license, and then that map might look dramatically different.
The map is only for the U.S. Yeah, that's
so a national meeting.
National meeting would work. Yeah, you can do international questions, and there actually is under the settings here. I didn't mention it, but there is international numbers that people from other countries can text. So maybe you're not doing a live presentation, but maybe you're doing a webinar with people all over the world, and you know that people happen to be up in Canada or over in Estonia. You can give them these other numbers so that if they're texting a number, all the responses will go to the same poll. So participant registration is where you can have your audience pre-register, meaning that they tell the system what their name is so that the system can associate a name with a phone number or a name with an IP address from a specific laptop or mobile device. So if I push add over here, I can get this link and I can send this link to my participants in advance, and that's just like getting that invitation email. They click that link and they'll type in their name and their phone number, and then the system will remember what their name and their phone number and their device IP address are, so that when you do those reports down the line, you'll be able to see the names next to it. If anybody's interested in doing that for a presentation, give me a call and I can help you make sure that it's all set up. What you're seeing here is all the people who have actually created Poll Everywhere accounts in the past and have sub-accounts with our campus site license. Not only are they poll creators, but they've also answered poll questions in the past. Is there any questions at this point? Anything you are interested in? Yeah?
I have a quick question. I know you said they've updated things, but we use this a lot with certain presenters. And now I have these like error messages I keep getting within there about this is open in Poll Everywhere, Bosonium container or something. Do you get those under? So
So the presenter during the lecture, it's giving them an error message, or afterwards?
it's giving them when we open up. Maybe it's when they're putting them in PowerPoint.
Yeah, the PowerPoint is tricky. I wish they hadn't changed the way that it works, but it's a little tricky to get those polls integrated right into a PowerPoint slide, because you always have to have the app running in the background, And you have to make sure that you're signed into the same account. So if you move to somebody else's computer, they might be signed in, so it's not associating their account with your poll question.
I'll try to find one and then show you.
Yeah.
Sometimes you can't even delete those particular things that it says it's remaining open.
Mm-hmm. But if you ever run into a situation where you're receiving an error message because you've integrated it into PowerPoint, the fallback, which is always much more reliable, is to use the web-based version. I've seen some people who just put a link to the poll everywhere right in their PowerPoint, so that when they get to that point in their PowerPoint, they just have something to click on that'll open the website, rather than trying to integrate it in there and running into all the problems that entails. Probably the easiest way to do PowerPoint integration is if you have a laptop and you know it works on that laptop, and you can go present by plugging your laptop in directly. But people run into the most problems when they create it on one computer and then move it to a lecture hall computer.
Right, you don't want to put their laptop in.
Yeah. Yeah. So I'd recommend, if you have any trouble, try using the website rather than PowerPoint.
So if we were going to insert a link, if you were doing a PowerPoint and then we have a slide and we want to go to the poll now,
Mm-hmm.
it would be, and if you were the presenter, let's say, you would go to the poll f.readm or?
No, that is the response. That's the page that everyone out there would go to. So if you're distributing a PowerPoint to people and maybe they're following along, you've distributed it in advance, the version you give them should have that link in it. The version that's up in front of the room should have that private link I talked about in the response, because that is a link directly to that polling slide. So I'll show you how that works here. If I have a blank presentation and say that I get to that point in my slide, I'm going to go to my polls here. I'm going to go to see this share and publish over here? If I grab that live visualization link, I'm going to click that, copy it. It's not the prettiest thing, but it will maybe create that as a hyperlink. Okay, and then if I'm in my presentation mode and I click that.
And that's different for each one of your poll questions?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Does it have to be?
Well, it will be. I mean, the visualization link is different for each question.
So you can't code X.
No.
Put a link to your main just poll everywhere page.
Yeah, you can do that too. You can do that too.
If you're going to answer them all at once, yeah.
If you just move your
Or you can toggle, right, between?
Well, if you do the link in here, but like you said, you could also just put a link to just poll everywhere generally and click on it. It's better, if you're going to do this, make sure you have already opened and logged into poll everywhere and maybe minimized your browser so that you don't have to go through the whole login process in front of everybody.
But like you said, the lecture hall, it is installed. So
It is installed in the lecture hall.
Okay.
Yeah, so if you're it's not installed in some of these other classrooms. I don't know why they haven't done that, but it isn't. So in the lecture hall, it'll work if you make sure to log into the app, which is why if you're going to do it, give me a call and I can make sure that it's going to work for you.
I think that's the easiest.
Mhm. If you're going to do multiple polls in succession, it's easier to do just the general link to poll everywhere, and then you'll have the toggle buttons. If you're doing just one poll, then it's pretty easy to just put that visualization link into your PowerPoint.
And so, again, then just what you're saying, so for the students, let's say Dr. Beta, because he uses this the most,
Mhm.
but
Mhm.
you show some PowerPoints and you toggle over. When they're looking in their Panopto, these questions that you've toggled over to, will that be recorded somewhere?
Yes, in Panopto it will. If you distribute the PowerPoint to them later, they're not going to see the poll questions, like the PowerPoint, the PPT file itself. But the Panopto recording, like I'm recording on Panopto right now, they're going to see anything that goes up on the screen.
So they could review if there was a question that they wanted to review.
Yeah.
They could see the right answer, I mean,
Mhm.
highlighted.
Yep.
So if you're doing individual questions, you can
Mhm.
do the live visualization link. What's the code, what's the link for just general?
Well, just general, that's just pollev.com.
Okay.
Yeah. Because if you're already logged in, it's going to bring you to the My Polls page. That's why I say you should log in first,
Right.
and then if you click on a link that's polleverywhere.com, it'll bring you to this. If you're not logged in, it's going to bring you to,
The login screen.
yeah, it's
Okay.
going to bring you to this.
So we pre-log in if we just want to be web-based, and then we just
Mhm.
put the polleverywhere.com link in the PowerPoint.
Yeah. Or don't even put it in the PowerPoint and just minimize PowerPoint and open up your web browser.
As long as you remember when you want to do it.
Yeah. Yeah, you may need a cue to yourself.
Nowadays I need a lot of cues. I'll just keep going.
Yeah. Okay. Any other questions? Okay, thanks very much. Like I said, I have Panopto recorded this, so if you want to watch this later, I can send that out. I think, are you taking people's emails on the, or do you have registration emails from this?
I have everybody's.
Okay, and this will also be posted on the faculty development page that describes this MedEd series. Okay, thanks very much.